This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We're going to get to Obamacare in just a second, but a couple of bits of breaking news. One, House Speaker Paul Ryan telling Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business that Republicans have found common ground on tax reform, at least in the House. The Senate, of course, will be another matter, as we're seeing play out with Obamacare repeal and or replace.
That's good.
Also, border adjustment tax off the table, so that's also good that that's not part of the common ground. And then New York Times reporting that Russia has seized 2 American diplomatic properties and ordered the U.S. Embassy to cut its staff in retaliation for the new sanctions that are being sent to the president's desk for signature. So that puts even more pressure on President Trump to sign that legislation to impose those new sanctions. And that's what we were told he was going to do. This was not going to be a dramatic event until Scaramucci started spouting off yesterday on Chris Cuomo's show.
But Huckabee Sanders came out 2 days ago and said that he's going to sign the sanctions bill.
Right. I hope Huckabee Sanders is correct. And then last night, of course, we had the vote on skinny repeal, as it's being termed.
Not to be confused with skinny margarita or skinny latte.
Correct. And it certainly wouldn't be confusing if you see who's voting on it.
Oh, hey-oh!
But you certainly understand why they would be voting against anything that's skinny, these politicians. So you have 3 go south: McCain casting the deciding vote, Murkowski and Collins, less surprising. And so this leaves Republicans still lurching for an answer on what comes after Obamacare. It's important to note that the issue, according to McCain, and this was both at a presser he had with Graham and Ron Johnson earlier in the day, and then after he voted down skinny repeal, is a commitment from the House Speaker that that bill would go to conference with the House and wouldn't just be passed because this is insufficient, this skinny repeal. He said that, and his girlfriend Lindsay said that too.
The skinny bill as policy is a disaster. The skinny bill as a replacement for Obamacare is a fraud. The skinny bill is a vehicle to get in conference to find a replacement. It is not a replacement in of itself.
And Senator Ted Cruz was quick to say, we lied and we misled the American people.
If you stand up and campaign and say we're going to repeal Obamacare, and you vote for Obamacare, those are not consistent. And the American people are entirely justified in saying any politician who told me that and voted the other way didn't tell me the truth.
That seems like a fair statement.
They lied to me, yeah.
If you said you were going to vote to repeal Obamacare and instead you voted to keep Obamacare, those two things are mutually exclusive. Those are two things are opposites. By the way, John McCain, when he was running for re-election, said this, I'm quoting, "It is clear that any serious attempt to improve our healthcare system must begin with a full repeal and replacement of Obamacare, and I will continue fighting on behalf of the people of Arizona to achieve it." For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Kimberly Leonard, who is the senior healthcare policy reporter for the Washington Examiner, WashingtonExaminer.com. Kimberly, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So, first of all, the press conference earlier in the day with McCain and Graham talking about skinny repeal and expressing concern that they didn't get the necessary assurances from House Speaker Paul Ryan on how the House and Senate would collaborate if they passed skinny repeal. What was Ron Johnson doing there? Did he get lost?
No, he was on the same page as the others. Essentially, they just wanted to make sure that skinny repeal was just going to be kind of a vehicle to get to what they eventually hoped to get to when it came to Obamacare repeal and replace. So they said, okay, if we just repeal a couple of parts of Obamacare, then we can come up with something later.
Well, so Johnson and Graham were convinced and McCain was not. How do you suss that out?
Well, there was a phone call, and what was interesting is that Paul Ryan released a statement shortly after they held this press conference that was a little bit vague. it didn't exactly promise that the skinny repeal would never become law. The funny thing about this bill was that it would have been a bill that a lot of senators would have been fine with advancing, but as long as they received reassurances that it would never become law. So they wanted to put forth some sort of a replacement plan. They wanted to do a lot more with Obamacare repeal, and it didn't really allow them the mechanism to do that. There wasn't enough to agree on. And in the end, Senator McCain was just unconvinced that they could come up with something better than what they had.
So he was scared that the bare bones plan would become law. So in your mind, is McCain a hero or a hindrance?
Well, I'll leave that up to the voters to decide. It seems as though he was pretty consistent when he came back this week and spoke on the Senate floor on Tuesday, casting that vote to begin debate on Obamacare repeal. He lectured his fellow senators about how the process had become far too partisan. And so you could already see that some of these issues were stirring within him. He didn't want to continue this process the way that it had happened. This wasn't done in an open way. It was done behind closed doors. We reporters who have been on the Hill, every single day trying to capture this, have had to run up to senators and try to discover what is being talked about and what's being proposed. It wasn't really something done out in the open. So I think that he was very concerned about the process.
Well, with respect to McCain and the whole bipartisan pap that he is so wont to spew, okay, Senator, you tell me, what is the legislation that garners Democrat votes? You put forward legislation that would receive bipartisan support, a bipartisan majority support, bipartisan votes up to the number 60. What does that look like? What does that include? Why aren't people challenging McCain? What is it exactly that you want? If I know what you don't want, and the same thing for Murkowski, and the same thing for Graham, and some of the others, even on the conservative side, that's a little clearer. But what is it they want?
Yeah. So Susan Collins actually has a bill that she has been touting for months now that would essentially turn a lot of funding and decision making back to the states. And so she and Senator Cassidy had presented that a while ago. It was something that I had kind of expected to go a little bit further, just because it would, at the end of the day, kind of allow both Republicans and Democrats to declare victory. But it ended up being something that just didn't really take off. And so I was a little bit confused as to why. But one of the things to keep in mind, too, with asking McCain to come up with something else is that, there were members that were told from the beginning that they were going to be involved in crafting this bill. Then all of a sudden they see text at the same time as everyone else does. Sometimes, we members of the media access some of these bills before other senators did. And so the bill that was presented tonight was actually presented only 2 hours before senators were asked to vote on it. They really didn't have any time to be able to come up with something.
Well, but they've had 7 years, haven't they?
They've had 7 years. I think part of it is they never expected President Trump to win, to be quite honest, and I think that they were a little bit taken aback. There are others who believe that they perhaps never really wanted to repeal Obamacare to begin with.
Now we may be getting somewhere, yeah, because, they've had 7 months, too, since Trump won. So,
they have. The problem is within the Republican Party, and there are groups that may say, well, the resistance movement won, all those protests helped, and so forth. Being on Capitol Hill, I can tell you that the divisions that exist are within the Republican Party itself. They don't agree on what the best path forward is to improve the healthcare system. There are too many divisions there, and some of them really like parts of Obamacare, and some of them hate all of it. And bridging that divide I guess at the end of the day became impossible.
All right, so what's next? Where do we go from here?
Well, they still have Obamacare right now is the law of the land. So we still have open enrollment coming up in November, which is, the period of time people have to sign up for private coverage if they don't get it from an employer or from the government. And those health insurance exchanges are facing a lot of troubles right now. You're seeing premium rates go up for next year. You're seeing counties that have no health insurer to buy coverage from. And so the Congress is going to have to come up with some sort of rescue package, probably, much to the probably regret of other members of Congress who don't want to see any sort of, the way that they might characterize bailout of insurance companies or anything like that. But next year is a, midterm election, and so they certainly don't want to see a bunch of stories about how people can't afford health insurance, how they were thrown off insurance, that they can't access anything. And then the administration also has a few tools at its disposal to sort of make things easier for customers who buy their health plans this way.
Democrats are clearly feeling their oats a little bit this week, even before last night's vote. Chuck Schumer mentioning single payer on Stephanopoulos' program on Sunday. Yesterday, or perhaps it was Wednesday, our senior senator, the esteemed Dick Durbin, saying the same thing, comparing it to Medicare. He's already making the argument. Do you get the sense, talking about the factions within the Republican Party and the path forward, that there is some within the Republican caucus who are content to concede defeat and just let this move towards single payer?
No, not at all. In fact, I'm not even certain the Democrats really want that. Democrats probably have as much division on single payer as Republicans have on repealing Obamacare, to be honest. It becomes a talking point, but as soon as you start to present different proposals and look at how much it would raise taxes, you really see a backlash. I mean, It's interesting because states have tried to pass single-payer systems, and they've turned it over to the voters to decide. And voters keep turning it down because, quite frankly, you have medical lobby groups who really don't want to see this happen. It'll mean a cut to their system, and it'll cut out, private insurance. It'll likely reduce a lot of profits and things like that, and they're worried about regulations that'll be placed on their business. So it would still face a tough road ahead, I would think.
All right. She is Kimberly Leonard, senior healthcare policy reporter for the Washington Examiner, WashingtonExaminer.com. Kimberly, thanks so much for joining us with your insights. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you.